Hey everybody, welcome back to the tavern. I'm your wonderful host and game master James, and tonight, finishing up the year of 2022, is a good friend of mine, Justin. Now, I met Justin about a year ago at Gen Con, and I had no idea who he was. But we were playing a game with last game board, and he stepped over and shook one of our players, Phil's hand. And I asked Phil, I said, "Who's Justin?" And he goes, "Oh, well, Justin is part of D&D in a Castle." And at about that time, my jaw dropped to the floor. Now, for people who don't know what D&D in a Castle is, it is a luxury experience playing Dungeons and Dragons with world-class game masters that you see on streams, on in movies and video game actors, and the plethora of knowledge and experience that they bring to a table is incredible. Now, before I we start with our adventure and find out who he's bringing to the adventure tonight, I'm just going to give Justin a couple seconds to tell us a little bit more, and then we'll jump into the adventure. So go for it, Justin.
Thanks so much, James. Yes. So D&D in a Castle, my work there, I'm really blessed to be the general manager of D&D in a Castle, which means that I get to be kind of behind the scenes, making sure that everybody's got their contracts in place and that customers are taken care of, and that we make sure that everybody has the information they need to make their trip just the vacation beyond imagination that we say it will be for them. So what happens at D&D in a Castle? I mean, like you said, we just have a fantastic roster of amazing world-class dungeon masters, and people come and play at their table. They get an exclusive like 24-hour campaign with the five other players at their table with their dungeon master over the course of the 4-day experience, along with a few other event-related activities that are quite wonderful. We redesign them kind of every event to see what we can bring that's fresh and new. But we typically have a ball, we have a banquet, we have trials and activities that relate back to your game, and will give you little trinkets, power ups, ways to role play in with items that you wouldn't otherwise get. And in one particular round last year, and including our July round this upcoming year, we have Jeremy Crawford come in, and he will basically take each of the tables on which for one of the blocks, take them away on a side quest adventure with all of their characters in whatever level they're in their campaign. They'll have that side adventure, and then it'll have real in-game impact on their game with their regular dungeon master as well. So that was just wildly popular, and to be blessed with a bunch of those big names, big writers, people that uh, people are just like so glad to see in person and to spend time with. I mean, you said, video game actors. Mark Meir has been one of our outstanding DMs that's come back again and again, and everybody just has a fantastic time, mind-blowing experience at his table. And B. Dave Walters has come back time and time again, and we're so grateful for him as well, being the the verified Stranger Things dungeon master that he is, and also just fantastic explosive experience that he gives his tables as well. Usually running level 20 campaigns and just going
Wow.
with whatever happens. Pitting people against Tiamat or whatnot. He's welcome to do whatever he wants with his table, and he welcomes chaos. So things like deck of many things shows up and just completely wrenches the game in different directions, and he flows with it. So yeah, the capability, the versatility, the experience of our DMs, it's really I mean an amazing experience, and we get that feedback all the time. So it's, like I said, an honor for me to be involved in it, and I'm so excited for our season upcoming in 2023. We've already had great sales. Our November round for next year, which is almost a full year away still, only has a few tickets left. Seriously, 3 tickets left with our DMs, our 11 DMs that are published, and we have 2 that are yet to be announced, and even some of those tickets are gone already. So there's all of 9 tickets left for that
Wow.
event. So yeah, we're pretty excited to see what that season will bring in total. And what can I say other than and it's just a fantastic honor to be doing that work and to be here to share it with you, and to have this tavern talk as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that sounds incredible. I mean, the the value that would be for a full weekend of just or a weekend. I think it's 3-4 days, something like
Yeah,
that.
it can be either in the week or on the weekend. Kind of depends on the way the schedule lines up.
Right.
Yeah, 4 days is the total experience, and then you have a full like 24-hour campaign in that time. So it's pretty
Wow.
intense.
That's awesome. Well, we'll get right back. We'll get back to that very quickly because we're going to keep kind of digging into the different sides of it, what the nuances are. But let's start with our adventure tonight.
Nice.
So tonight's adventure begins with the biting cold hitting your skin. The wind picks up and blows snow into your face. You trek up the mountain known as Beldrock. Looking ahead, it's hard to see much, jutting out of the rocks lies a massive manor. The towers that stick out of the top of a group of steep roofs. Windows decorate in rows across the top floors, and a large iron and stone pillars raise it high into the sky. As you push through the dense snow, the feeling of warmth slowly catches your your spirits. Looking up at the house on stilts with pillars that reach 20 feet high, and passing them a large, massive wooden door with decorative gold markings and accents stands before you. Slowly, as you pass the threshold, the wind kind of cuts away, and the door slowly creaks open, revealing an amber glow of lanternite within. Now, as you walk in, who is walking in?
The person walking in is about 7'11". They're stocky, well built, but young still. The musculature on this body is clearly honed with many hours of intense labor, and what this person is wearing looks like odd bits and pieces of various kills throughout their experience in the wild. And the gray, ashy skin tone that you see, as well as the bald head and some oddly bright red and green face paint, is the hallmark figure of a female Goliath that steps in with two battle axes over the shoulders of her boulette crafted armor that is over the body, and an Ankeg helmet that is over top of this head as well, or rather currently leaned back, ready to come up into a defensive position. And stepping into the amber glow is Talia Anakalatai, better known as Trunk Shearer.
Bronx Shear. Okay. Well, I was just resting for a moment to listen to that wonderful description of Talia as she walks into what seems to be an abandoned manor, but gives off a homely glow. Now, Talia, would this be an area that Talia would be familiar with, or is Talia kind of out of her element here?
So the mountains, the heights, are something that Talia is very familiar with. Her own clan and tribe are based in the mountains, and the cold is something that she's well accustomed to. So stepping out of the cold into the warmth, though it be welcome, certainly wasn't necessary. And so this
Nice.
particular manner, though, is new to her. She's not, she has spent the last approximately a year in and out of more civilized areas, or rather large civilizations. But she's much more comfortable in the wilderness alone than she is in a place that looks like it's prepared for visitors and large crowds.
Awesome. So this my next question, because I love this description that you're giving me and the flavor we're coming out of it. Is this a character that you've played, or is this a character you made strictly for the tavern?
So this is a character I've played.
There we
I
go.
played Talia for about 2 year span, 1 year in game before we decided to hit pause. And though she started out at 17, and by about midway through our game, she had reached 18 years old, she wound up being aged by a spell 20 years.
Ah, Wow. Okay.
And so she went right into her late 30s. All of a sudden, the stroke of that curse that was restored of her. And then when she was having and preparing for the battle of her lifetime, what she prepared for and been training for the entire time, uh, just before she got into this fight, she took what she knew would be a some sort of a potion wrapped up in an apple that she had gained along her journey, but it was a mystery what that potion would be. And she bit
Okay.
into it, and it was a potion that subtracted 13 years from her
So
life. So
returning
she
her back to more of a younger version of herself.
18 down to 5. So
Oh,
the the though all of her experience didn't disappear, her character changed dramatically to one of much more impulsive behavior and much more uninhibited, as well as
right.
just playfulness started to spark all over the place once again, where it kind of been driven out by a hard life up to that point. And her physique was, once quite stocky and brawny and built with the age and whatnot. And though she maintained her strength, she lost the frame, not necessarily in her height, but in just the muscular build, became very lean.
Wow. That is a story. Oh my goodness. It's so good. So I'm curious. So when you took the pause, at what point was Talia at? And then when you were moving to the next story. So is this when she bit the apple, or did she actually bite the apple in gameplay and
Yeah, she
things
bought
changed during play?
Yeah, she bit the apple in gameplay. Like I said, the moment before the big bad battle, where it was
Yeah.
1-1, and she was going to be taking on um, Boulder Biter, who was the Titan that had slaughtered her parents and then framed her as the murderer and had her outcast from her own tribe at a young age of 11. So that she then spent the rest of her time trying to uncover and learn about the hated magic that Boulder Biter had used to do that particular evil deed. Discovered magic items, discovered their power, was gaining her own strength and capabilities, and had become a runic knight over the course of her adventure,
I
growing in
love that
size and
class.
stature.
I absolutely love that class. The Rune Knight is
Okay.
incredibly fun.
Yes,
Uh,
exactly. So all
yeah.
that to say, it was in game. She fought that battle as her 5-year-old playful, psyche self, as well as with all of the strength that she had gained and magic items that
Yeah.
she gained. And this was in the Wild Mount setting, and she had
Okay.
Stormbreaker. No, the Stormbreaker. I'm getting my mythologies mixed up. What's the name again of the? Oh, I probably have it on here. Um, so she got to be a storm avatar, but why am I missing the name? It's the storm girdle. That's the one, storm girdle, which is the one that's the magic item that levels up as you level with it, and
Oh
becomes
yeah. Yeah, we
yeah.
actually have in my Thursday game, though, so they don't know it exactly. They have a dormant storm girdle that
Uh-huh.
they are walking around with, and the characters I think are level 4 or 5.
Right.
So once that thing unlocks, it's gonna be it's gonna be solid.
So
But
intense.
yeah, she
Yeah.
uh she found it in a inside of a heap of trash. Literally, they were in the bottoms of. We're playing through Horde of the Dragon Queen, and they're inside the hatchery area, and there is a just a refuse place where they're throwing all dead bodies and all that.
Hmm.
And I had roll, and I was like, and she had mentioned that these were the types of things she wanted. And I was like, well, if she gets a high enough roll, I'm gonna surprise her with it. So I threw it at her, and I was like, but it's cracked. There's like broken points to it. So now she's on a mission to figure out what this belt really does. So she's
Hmm.
trying to repair it, all this stuff. So it's been a fun little side quest for her. Sadly, due to scheduling, she had to step away for a couple months. But we'll see when she comes back what happens with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Those vestiges are a
no,
lot of
it's
fun. So we'll
yeah,
see
the
how that
vestiges are a
goes.
lot of fun.
Hmm.
I think it's the one thing that you don't see a lot of in Dungeons and Dragons because it's like you get a weapon and then you kind of either stick with the weapon or you just throw the weapon away and get a new weapon.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, Vestiges are a little different. You can kind of let them grow with you and you make them, and it feels more personalized. We recently on our stream started playing in the One Ring, and the reward system kind of does the same thing as the vestige. Every level, if you get a reward point, you can either toss your weapon away and get a new one, or you can describe in a thematic way how you enhanced the weapon. So slowly the weapon can grow stronger and stronger as the time goes on, which is pretty neat, in my opinion.
yeah, for sure.
I'm hoping D&D comes up with a full customized how do you build a how do you build one of these things so that I
Mhm.
can understand how to do it customized
Framework for
way.
leveling it up and a framework for giving it the appropriate amounts of power.
Exactly. Yep. Be great. Wow. So I think we discovered it. So full fighter, I'm guessing, or is it
Yes, yeah.
multi-classed?
Full fighter class. Yeah,
Fighter
exactly.
class.
Started out as
And
an Echo Knight and then became a Rune Knight partway through. Had a rather, um, I'd say, yeah, dramatic moment transition where she changed from the Echo Knight into Rune Knight.
oh,
Mm.
nice. Did the G so did you lose all of your Echo Knight abilities and go straight Room Knight at that point?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
I know some GM will allow it and be like, I can kind of pick and choose based on like sub levels, and I was like, that starts getting a little thicky at that, in my opinion. So yeah,
Yeah.
I was interested to hear if that's how that worked or not for you.
Yeah, that particular GM, when we were doing that, he was getting excited by some of the new released content, and it was
Mm,
one of the line items. I don't know if it's Tasha's. I'm forgetting which one it is that specifically mentions the idea of switching subclasses if there's a particularly strong
yes,
reason narratively to do so.
I think it's
Um,
Tasha's.
yeah, so that's what we were experimenting with, and I saw this opportunity, and he had even suggested to me, Justin, you're playing this character, you're chasing after all these growth potions to try to get bigger and stronger, but there is this subclass that has the giant form kind of wrapped up in it. So maybe this is really what you're chasing after, and reviewed it, and it made a lot of sense for us to do work in a transition like that. We picked the right time, and it was really quite an epic moment. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, those are fun when you're switching, subclasses, your characters switch classes based on something that's happened. Uh, I've had it a couple times in games. The last time I did it was absolutely amazing. The player fell in love with both versions of the character, and I was like, okay, this was a lot of fun. So, uh, yeah, Talia has a long past though. I was really excited when you started just describing, the pelts and the on-keg helmet, because I'm guaranteeing that all this came from actual battle that she's done in game, and
Yeah.
those are so exciting to hear.
Mhm.
So, what would you say is Talia's most dramatic moment in her life at this point?
Oof. Well, the most dramatic moment was what kicked her out of her tribe, really.
Okay.
It was a deep inset trauma when she was witness to her parents being slaughtered, and then also was painted as the villain, um, you know,
Okay.
rather immediately, and then kicked out, and she ended up being raised by sprites in the wild, a few kilometers away from her actual tribe, and so she has an interesting kind of history around sprites and her parents, and now it's 7 years back. It's like half of her life ago when that took place.
Right.
It's still like the first time she had a party member that died, it triggered her so much that she
Mm.
went into a complete dissociative state,
Oh,
and
wow.
couldn't interact with the world around her, until time had passed, and that was really the development of her Echo Knight abilities was in that traumatic triggering moment where
Okay.
all of a sudden she was like she had this kind of split of self that happened, and
Yeah.
her like other time self was consoling her, so that
So that
there's
was
this
all
Echo
that
Knight
was the only person she
consoling
would
her
speak
through it.
to was
Yeah,
herself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that
That's
Echo Knight had like
fantastic.
a parental nature to it as well. So really that it was like it just that trauma colored everything going forward, and her pursuit of magic and her pursuit and her sense of like hermitness but longing for connection was all really
Hmm.
back to that loss of her parents and loss of her tribe, and then the need to overcome and to become powerful and to discover her own strength came from the need to reinstate what was right in her own tribe as well. So
Right.
that instigating moment really was the most traumatic moment for her. But then, of course, it played out multiple times in the course of the campaign.
No, that's solid. I'm telling you, your GM, well done. I will say, well done. Now, I'm sure all of you players are probably just as deepened in their stories. It sounds like you have a great group. Uh, is is the same group that you played the first time and the group played the second time? Is it the same players and characters, or did you kind of have to take a couple of the characters had to move on to other things and bring new ones in?
Yeah. So that particular story is still on pause. We haven't actually gone back yet.
Okay.
So we have this like vague promise of getting back to it, but whether or not it happens, we had COVID happen in the meantime, really, which has stopped us from getting together in a physical way. And it was, well, I'm actually forgetting. This is the interesting thing about memory. I'm trying to remember if we played a bunch of it during COVID or not. I don't think so, but that's fascinating. That yeah, because we've played other campaigns since, so it's been a few
Right.
years since we've gone back to that one, and it's always kind of dangling as the carrot that eventually we'll get back to that story.
Yeah. No, I
But
have my son's 16, and I believe you met him when at Gen Con this year. So we were playing all there
yeah,
with Phil. And he had his first character was a Hexblade Warlock, and our tech Eric, who is sitting in the background right now, he was in that campaign as well with a magnificent uh, Bard of Whispers
yeah,
for the College of Whispers. And it was right before a bunch of my friends had to go overseas for a deployment. They took on a acolyte of Inyagu, the old god, so an acolyte of him. And at the end, they were having such a hard time with it. Uh, the patron of my son said, throw your dagger in the portal, and I will protect you." And when he did, it was towards the end of the night. He threw it in. He threw his hexblade into the portal. It ripped. It kind of almost did like a wormhole where it pulled them into the portal instead, and they
hmm
fell into Avernus. And then I cut the entire scene, and everybody was like so mad at me. And we have yet to pick it up, and they're sitting in the first level of hell. So, uh, yeah, they were like, "What? This is what happened?" I was like, "Yeah, guys, we'll see you in 6 months when you get back." And then we never picked it back up. So,
yeah, yeah,
just like you, the carrot's kind of still sitting out there.
yeah,
Eric's character Weldon is a family favorite of mine and of the group. So,
amazing, yeah,
yeah, we those are fun because you're like, it always sits in the back of my mind. I'm like, how do I continue this story sitting here now? Like, this is where the story is.
yeah,
Where does it go from there?
hmm
But yeah, no, I had those are good moments.
yeah.
Is there anything else about Talia that you want to share? I guess would be the best way to put that.
Well, um, one thing that I'd say is really fascinating to me,
Sure.
um, about Talia was role playing a female character,
Hmm.
which this was the first time I had chosen to do so, and really basically becoming enlightened to my presuppositions and stereotypes that I was playing out, um,
Ah,
and realizing that I have some kind of like deep set assumptions about what it's like to be a woman, and uh, and so that was really fascinating to me, and I'd say quite humbling because admittedly I feel
right.
like I played her in almost like too stereotypical of a way, and I would have
Yeah.
loved to know what it was like to bring to life a female character that had a lot more like just developed nature around what it's like to be
Right.
a woman going through her transition into adulthood. Um,
Right.
but what's interesting too is that the Goliaths are less sexually dimorphic than humans based on the
Hmm.
class. I mean, sorry, the race description.
Right.
So there's a sense of it being like, well, okay, there's a bit of an ease of leaning into that character with my own experience because I know that in their culture there's not that kind of stereotypical role
Right.
splitting. They choose to take on the same roles and within their society, so it's a much more
Yeah.
egalitarian society. Or
Hmm.
yeah, so it was fascinating to play that out. And one thing that happened, of course, was in my maybe leaning into stereotypes a bit too much, was this Goliath who had been isolated so long, going into society, falling in love with this orc that she met that was an inch taller than her, which of course it's like I found somebody taller than me, right? and
Right. Yeah.
and we began in this campaign rolling for attractiveness. We'd roll. I mean, so this again is going to sound bad. I admit this will sound bad, but we started rolling for attractiveness, and the DM. I asked the DM, well, how attractive is this orc? And he rolled a 10. So then I
Okay.
played this like melt nature of just seeing this orc standing there
Right.
and yeah. So Thrall, the orc, she was enthralled with Thrall. Um, and this, so playing that out some, it became one of her major obsessions to find Thrall again because he was in a magical space that was kind of in a solo adventure.
Okay.
Um, and then of course
It's
roll.
not magical. It's kind of
Yeah,
like when you read a book and you're like, oh, if only I could find that person, and you close the
in
book
real
and you're like,
life.
I can't get to that person ever again.
Well, yeah. So all that to say, playing out this infatuation and this love story and this growing into of age, it was neat to see the parallels with myself and the contrast with with what I assumed it would be like to be in female shoes going through that transition.
Right.
So that's, I mean, it's one of the things that I love about D&D and role playing is that way that it reflects back to you who you
Yeah.
are and the way that it gives you the opportunity to basically level up how you engage in the
Right.
real
How
world.
you understand life in general around you, and especially with those, like you said, the stereotypes and the feelings of like we don't really know what it's like to like be a female, right? Like this is not something some of us can do.
Mm,
Uh, Others have more of that connection to being able to see both sides of things.
yeah,
Um, and as a game master, I have to deal with it all the time because that's, I could throw a female NPC out and a random person could be like, oh, I'm gonna have this conversation. But if the character's not built to being, that way, or is built to being that way, it changes things immediately. And it's not
yeah,
really the fact that they're male or female, it's the fact how the character's going to play it out with that perspective.
totally,
Um,
totally.
so
Mhm.
that's an interesting concept. And I really liked the ending to our adventure portion of the chat.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for guiding me through that. That's quite a fun like mini character exposition and slash
Yeah.
yeah adventure board.
So for people who are just coming to the tavern tonight, this is what we do. The first section of our tavern is called the adventure, and this is where it's as if somebody is walking into a tavern and telling that story. Um, but we've leveled that up over the last couple months, and we're hoping that you'll help us level another one. And by doing that, you'll notice in the chat room it'll say to do tips. Now, tips are not going back to the misfit, so please remember that when you think about doing this. And we're only looking for $25 as a whole. So if you start seeing so and so put up five, so and so put up one, kind of gather that number. We don't want to get more than 25 because our artist is doing this for very low price. Now, if you want to donate more, it'll go to the artist. 100% of the money goes back to the artist for this show. And after we hit that $25 mark, what we do is we actually build the head and shoulders version of the character that was described tonight. So in this case, it would be Talia. So for anybody interested in helping us out with that, please, the link's going to pop up in the chat room. Help us bring Talia to life. And at the end of the show, I'll drop a Google Drive link. Keep a hold of that because throughout the following week, when she produces it, we drop it in that Google Drive link. And for the entire month, as long as you have access to that Google Drive link, you can go in, grab the character, and play it for your own character or for your own story. The goal is to build a massive amount of people for the tavern and then one day hear about one of those players being played somewhere else in another person's game and going, oh no, that was guest so and so on the tavern, and he was the one doing this. And that's kind of our hope and dream, is that we can continue to populate people's worlds with these characters that are coming in from the guests. Now we're going to move to our second portion. The second portion really is why we get guests. We want to share what they're doing in the world of Dungeons and Dragons and in TTRPGs around the world. Justin, you have a very unique role in this concept as the general manager for Dungeons and Dragons in a Castle. And I know you work side by side with Cameron and Tara and who are the founder and co-founder. I'm curious because this is something, I am such a wonderful, like, crazy history person. When I was growing up, I didn't go to amusement parks or go to movies all the time. I would be the one who would yell to my mom, hey mom, where's a big house? Where's a castle? Now, when I say castle, I live in the United States, so castles are not the same. Please do not ever think that I'm talking about a European castle. I haven't been there yet. It's a goal. But that's what I would do. So I've been to these massive houses, plantations, things like that throughout the United States. But the dream is to finally get back to the homeland and actually see these castles in their fullness. So what is it like to, be a part of a community that works at a castle 24/7? Like, gotta know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I will say that our team is actually split up all over, really North America slash into the UK. So we don't stay at the castle and work in the castle all the time. We fly in a few days before the event, set everything up, and welcome our guests, and then have the event and pack up and make our way back to where our home lives are. And that's actually in a very different regions around the world. So Cameron and Tara, Cameron is based in California. Tara, one of the reasons that I'm working for D&D Castle is that I got to know Tara, who is the other founder, as a friend first, and got to know her whole family. Did some work for her husband, who's a local musician here, and I also have musical aspirations in the sense that I'm a singer-songwriter and perform in musicals and opera. And so awesome. I was working with him as kind of an assistant, just to kind of get what it was like to be a professional musician in Edmonton, where he's able to have his mainstay income all come from performing in Edmonton. Wow. Mm-hmm. Which is quite remarkable as a musician. So I was working with him, and Tara kind of looked over his shoulder and saw that I had some skills that she thought would be very useful at D&D Castle. And then that's one of the ways that I wound up kind of stumbling my way into this job and this position. It took a little while to go from just being a general helper into general manager. And so the story of like where we are, I should also include two of our other team members, Zori Gervais and Ricardo Soriano, and they're based in Winnipeg. So we actually have almost like a more Canadian team than a US. Yeah. But our company is US based, because we have most of our clientele coming from the US. Most of our guests fly in from the US. We have a good contingent that comes from Canada, from the UK. And so, when it comes to the way that this company kind of came together, it's really quite a widespread community effort. And we have several all-star helper staff members, team members that are in the UK, in the Newcastle/Lumley Castle area. Lumley Castle, UK being the castle that we use regularly. And so we have a team that's there as well as here and also in the States. But yeah, so that's my kind of like caveat first, is that we're not based in the castle all the time. But when we are in the castle, working it 24/7, is it's I mean uh it has this initial shock, and then it becomes mundane, and then every now and then you just have this, whoa, I'm in a castle that has history that goes back to the 14th century.
Right.
Um, Especially when you have a guest like Guy Sklanders from How to Be a Great GM show up, and he's a historian. So he did a
Oh
bunch of
yeah.
and he gave tours of the castle with the research that he did, that were just so enlightening as to why each room is different in the castle and what it meant at the time and what the original structure was and how it developed over the centuries of it being around. And so it's just absolutely fascinating, and you get gobsmacked with this every now and then as
Yeah,
you're
I bet.
hanging out in that castle. Um, so yeah, it honestly, and the rooms are so unique. I'll have to say that I was in 4 or 5 different rooms over the course of this September October run. I switched around to kind of get a taste of the different rooms that we
Hmm.
offer to our guests, and some of them they're kind of like, if you imagine a small cottage in the mountain,
Okay.
and then you just look out the window and you happen to be looking at a castle. But others are more like, and those would be kind of the courtyard rooms, right, where you feel like, because you have the timber ceilings and you have the more homey, campy type feel. It's still
Right.
lovely space, but and then you look outside, you see a castle, you walk into the grand hall, and you experience that. Some of the other ones, though, they're in the castle. There's these expansive rooms, and some of them have like the Narnia cabinet. So you go into your hotel room at first, and you're looking around, and you're kind of getting settled, and you realize, wait a sec, I could really use a washroom. And you start searching for the washroom, and you get frustrated, and you're like, okay, where
You
is it
got a
hiding?
kidding? It's inside the Narnia cabinet.
You open up the cabinet, the main door of the cabinet, and you walk into this sprawling bathroom that's inside the cabinet. It's it's yeah, intense. So there's all types, and there's one that's one particular room that's a converted chapel in the castle, and it has these huge tall ceilings, and the 4 post bed in that, it's this king size bed that has, they seem like they're 40-foot poles as the posts. They just reach right up to the ceiling, and you have to climb stairs to get into your bed, right? Like it's
That's right. So I, growing up, like my grandparents were that way. They had like, you know, 12-foot tall beds. I'm like, why? What is the point of
yeah,
this?
yeah, exactly.
Jumping into bed, trying to literally.
It
Um,
reminded me of being a kid, because
yeah,
because I couldn't just sit into my bed. I had to,
right.
like, I had my hands and whip myself up into bed, which is yeah, it reminded me of being a kid jumping into bed.
I think maybe it's the way to give you that kid feel, because then I'm pretty sure if the beds are that big, I can squeeze under the bed too, because I feel as a kid I can't do that with the beds I have now. But like
Yeah,
my grandparents' bed, even as a child, I could squeeze under the bed pretty easily,
yeah.
and that's that's
There's
really funny.
something funny, sorry, not funny, something sad about the transition from when climbing under a bed is exciting and fun and a little scary, to seeing storage drawers under your bed and being excited by that because you have more storage space. There's something sad about that
There's something
transition
about
in life, you know?
there's that point where you hit life and you're like, if I just put another couple drawers under this, I could have more room to do things. Compared to, I can make a fort under that bed and
Yeah.
nobody will mind me. Like
Pick
there's
up my
that, definitely
sheets
that
on
change.
the desk. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's hilarious.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I didn't know that. And that's very cool that every room kind of has its own little feel to it and its
Yeah.
own uniqueness. Um,
Hmm.
I get the luxury of at least touring in North Carolina. There's a castle that was built that was modeled after the castles in Europe. And all they're using it for currently is weddings and like reception parties.
Hmm.
And my immediate thought when I walked through this thing was like, how do I make D&D in this? Because this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and this was before I heard about D&D in a castle.
Mm.
Um, but no, that's got to be a trip. How many rooms are in it? Just curiosity?
Oh, so I believe there's approximately 80. Some of them are kind of under renovation.
Right.
They refurbish them as we go. But in terms of like room numbers, it starts at one and goes up to 87, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a number of rooms in various different sizes, and like we have different types of rooms. So when you're booking for D&D in a castle, you first book your registration and then you book your accommodation. Just
Right.
there are different price points to basically the size and luxury of the room. So yeah, that's I believe about 80, of which about 60 are what we currently have available to us to use at any given time. A number of them are converted into, the kind of the background staff rooms, etc.,
Right.
and or we have, insider information. There's always one room at the castle that is our DM resource library, where we stack up a whole bunch of the lore and books and resources like minis and terrain and even some self-pampering stuff, which was inspired by one of our DMs that we had this
I'm
last
not
year.
surprised.
Travis McElroy came in and made sure that we had pampering stuff for all the DMs. So like masks and moisturizers and a few others.
Right.
It was really quite a beautiful thought, and we'll
Fantastic.
bring that forward. So yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I mean, it's a lot of work. I mean,
it is.
if you've played a game before as a game master, you know it takes hours to prep and prepare, and
Mm.
then taking it to that level where you have to be given a world-class experience. It's got to be very heavy on the workload and giving him that opportunity to relax and whatnot. So, because I'm sure the people that are going to watch this will want to know is, can you kind of walk me through what a day looks like
Totally.
without giving me too many secrets? Because I don't want to spoil your event. That would be
Oh
horrible.
no. Well, I mean, hey, it's not like we have
It's not like it's spoiling it though. You're just, giving those sneak peeks.
happy to give little teasers. Yeah, exactly. Well, the basic idea is the whole event is centered around playing the game, the campaign that you're about to play. So, when you arrive, you're actually immediately introduced to your DM and whisked into session zero.
Awesome.
And we allow DMs and guests to interact in our digital tavern before showing up at the castle. So different games and tables will be at different amounts of prep before showing up. Some will have
Right.
done all the session zero character creation, et cetera, et cetera. Check-ins about safety before they show up. Some will choose to just give like character creation guidelines beforehand, and then at the event, then if there's any tweaking that needs to happen in session zero, that'll happen then too. But session zero will bleed into starting your campaign, so that people get a foretaste of the campaign. And then there's check into your rooms, get yourself comfy, get yourself prepped, and the first night is really it's a designed get comfy at the castle. It's a designed event of like celebratory banquets and some activities that evening that are a bit more voluntary. Like you can choose to go to them, or you can choose to go sleep if you need to due to jet lag. And then things start the next morning when we get into the gaming days, and we have 3 gaming days back to back. And those 3 gaming days are where the campaign gets into the heavy time and into the epic,
Right.
of course. And so yeah, you wake up, you have your breakfast, you get excited for the day. You go into your first session, which is a 3 hour block, and then you get to have an extended lunch where there's some time for you to like process what just happened, some time for DMs to prep for the next session, and some goods. We have lunchtime activities so that if you
Right.
want more, then you can run off and take part of various things that we're planning. We don't have it set for each round. We have kind of a
Right.
trial and error through a bunch of different activities to see what really lands well. So in
Yeah.
the past, we've had things like archery or falconry. We've had things like um, running quick, other games. So
Right.
allowing small one shots to happen, or we were tossing around the idea of of what I'll give this away now, but if it doesn't happen, you're not allowed to come back and point at me and say, Justin, you promised this. Because it was just an idea that we all loved, was the idea of dwarven croquet, where you have croquet setup where you have a warhammer as your croquet mallet, and you're given a dwarven beard, and you go at it and have a great time.
So down.
So
Well, by the time I would be there, the dwarven beard will already be there. So okay, we'll
there
be
it
good.
is. There it is. So yeah, you'd go take a little break for lunch. You'd do some activities if you want, and then you jump back into the game in the afternoon. Similarly, there'll be a dinner break along with certain things like panels, and we have a kind of special event mini hour in the evenings, and then jump back in for a wrap up in a game. And then that somewhat repeats, somewhat alters day after day. But like I said, that main core component is we make sure that there's 7 to 8 hours of gaming in every day
Yeah.
of your experience at D&D and
So
Cast.
so is that 7 to 8 hours all 4 days, or is it 7 to 8 hours for the 3 days, and then you have the the no
Yeah,
session?
the latter, where it's
Okay.
7 to 8 hours for the 3 gaming days, and then
Yeah.
that starting gaming session is on the arrival day. And some of our DMs and players love to do the play it out to the end. So the very last round 8 of 2022, we had Jeremy Cobb and Mark Meir played to the wee hours of the morning with their
Yeah.
tables. And so Mark
I'm
Meir,
not surprised. Mark is
Mark,
so dedicated. It's a beautiful thing.
it's intense. So Mark um, went until 3:30 a.m. with his crew. 3:30 a.m.
To
and
finish it up.
and they finished up, and everybody was that super tired happy. Jeremy Cobb went till 5:10 a.m. in the morning.
So I'm curious. So when you say 5:10 in the morning,
Yeah.
the last session starts when?
So Jeremy Cobb set his session up that day a little bit different than typical. But what Mark Meir was doing, our previous schedule had 3 gaming blocks that were all 4 hours long. So you'd have a morning block, a midday block, and then an evening block, and you
Right.
wouldn't necessarily play all 3. So Mark had it where it was afternoon block and evening block, and then extend to whenever, at their choice, right? Voluntary. Um, and so that was a 7:30 onward was his, so 7:30 to 3:30 a.m. And then the afternoon block was the 2 to 6 time.
Yeah.
Jeremy Cobb, he had a bit of a different setup because we'd originally scheduled him for a morning and an afternoon session, but they really wanted to play out the end. So they set it up where they did an 11 to noon, 2 hours, and then they did the afternoon block. And I believe there was some activities like a panel that people wanted to attend in that
Right.
dinner time. So they got back together at 9 and then played out till 5:10
Till
a.m.
5 o'clock. So you're talking, I mean, it's been years since I've been able to play a 12-hour session back to back, like just straight up.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I would definitely feel like I had went back to my heyday of being in high school or first year of college, where you're sitting there and you're just, wide-eyed, and you're waiting for the story to figure out what the heck the next step is. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's exciting. And that's dedication to your game masters. So
Well, no
very,
kidding. I mean, just a huge amount of awesome was what was
yeah.
provided. And I mean, not every game master does that. Not every dungeon master does that, and we don't require it of them. Of course not. We like
You can't really do that.
yeah, we'd be breaking so many things, including people. But but we want to leave the space for that if people choose to
Game
do it.
master too.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely something that has a bit of that culture of like what we want to make space for is if you come to the castle wanting to just game all the time, then you have that option.
Yeah.
So we make sure that there's a space for people to do pickup games if they want to just go, after they're done their sessions for the day. And one thing that we do provide throughout the event, coffee, tea for sure, but we even have energy drinks in the gaming rooms so that if people are running low
Kind
on
of
energy,
neato.
they can go ahead. And that's part of the all-inclusive nature of it is that
Yeah.
we provide that, and it's not like you have to pay for your energy drinks. You can just
Right.
go and
So pretty
energize
much
up.
you get so anything that's non-alcoholic you can get for free while you're at the castle is what I'm
Yeah,
getting.
yeah. Anything that's, I mean, we'll make it a little different than that. Anything that's not a bar or restaurant order,
Yeah,
because you can technically order extra things off of the bar menu or restaurant.
right.
But yeah, anything that's we provide refreshments, beverages, all the meals, of course. Everything that we would need is taken care of for you in that registration price. So yeah.
That's awesome. And it does, in my opinion, give me a little bit because when I first started hearing about the luxury experiences that Dungeons and Dragons offers, and I was like, who's going to pay the amount of money that you pay to do these things?
Yeah.
Now that I've kind of gotten the back end of things and understood everything that goes into it, not just, a world-class game master and you're playing in a castle, but you've got pretty much an entire itinerary for 4 days. Anything you really want within reason is already included.
Hmm.
And because I mean, you get what, 3 meals a day at least. I'm sure snacks are somewhere in this
Snacks
picture.
provided all day long. Yep.
Yeah, snacks provided all day long. So unless you're trying to, and personally for me, if I'm going strictly to game, I'm not going to be sitting there grabbing a drink every 2 hours, those types of things. I don't need it. I've got to be focused. You got to play the game.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think
You
that
know, you
is
mentioned now two
interesting.
things that are reminding me of the fact that the real design behind um the event was about you said it kind of takes you back to those university days or that high school day
Yeah,
where you can game with that stamina and so Cameron, who was our primary, like, so Cameron and Tara, brother sister team, when they
yeah,
decided to go ahead with this, Cam represented kind of the D&D side because he was the one that would do that. He would spend the whole weekend from Friday as
yeah.
soon as you got off school to when you had to go back to school Monday morning playing D&D. That was just
Right.
his love of D&D was that intense. Tara was the castle side, where she was the one that was experienced with planning events and making these
Mhm.
epic. She has her own company called Regency Encounters, where they host Pride and Prejudice balls, among other things that are
Oh,
of
nice.
that Regency era. So they working together came up with this, D&D in a castle, a vacation experience after Cam finally got fed up with living life in a way where he couldn't get away and do
He
that anymore.
played
None
Dungeons
of
and
his friends.
Dragons whenever he wanted for as long as he wanted.
Yeah,
So
so
he
he
just created it all himself.
Yeah, exactly. So
Uh,
the first time it was just he told his friends, "Look, we're going on vacation together. We're gonna
yeah,
rent out." It wasn't. I don't think it was a castle. It was like a fancy hotel that they
yeah.
rented out, and they got a room in that hotel, and they just played. And then the next time it was okay. Let's see if I can invite a few other people to jump in on this. And we had 30 people show up to the first actual castle, playing D&D in
Wow.
the castle. And then after that, it built forward again to the next year. 110 people came to multiple different events.
Yeah.
And then we had the 2 year pause due to COVID, and um, we had 300 people come in 2022 to D&D in a castle. And we're really excited to see the growth of the company,
Right.
and the fact that people really want to come back again and again. And it's the type of thing where it was always said, this is like your once in a lifetime D&D experience. Show
Yeah.
up,
And now people
save up.
are,
People are coming back. Like people
yeah,
that made the declaration that it would be the one time they would ever spend that much money. They just
yeah.
had such an amazing time at the
That's
table with their
awesome.
crew and at the event as a whole that they're like, no, I've got to go back. And so we had people come as a honeymoon that are now signing up to come back for their first anniversary, right? And
Oh, there we go. So it's going to
we
be
had
more like an anniversary thing for them that
yeah,
they
yeah,
can
yeah,
roll
exactly.
into it.
Which is
That's
really cool.
awesome.
So all that to say
Uh,
that the original design of the event was really around that getaway, spend the time, devote it to the game and the bonding,
yeah.
and walk away exhausted and yet refreshed at the same time.
No,
Um,
I have a lot of friends of mine who have all mentioned this idea of, would it be so cool to go away for a weekend and just game for an entire weekend? Um, And I tell them, I was like, well, if that's the case, then I have to cut every single other D&D project I'm working on for the next year because I'm gonna have to plan for a while.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
otherwise, I think it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, where I'm testing something like this at Genghis this year for people that are in Colorado area. I'll be running a 3 hour block Friday, Saturday, Sunday with the same players through an entire story where they'll go from level one, level two, level three,
Mm.
and they'll be playing in Dark and Haven, which is our sprint game that we run or that we ran for I think 12 weeks
Yeah.
for our story group. So looking forward to doing that all through the GUI Cube uh, realm. But to bring the additional to it, to bring the, I mean, the reason I called the thing, fantasy beyond imagination. I mean, this is that over the top immersion that we talk about all the time that people are thriving to, and they want so badly. They
Mm.
want to get out of the monotony of day to day and see something that they'll never see again. But in this case, it seems like people find a way to see it again. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
wow, that is awesome. For our chat room, anybody that's in the chat, I'm going to put up two links. First link is if you want to recommend for Dungeon Master. You can go to their website and you can recommend a Dungeon Master. If you want to recommend me, please do so. Second one is for all of our game masters out there. If you want to be a part of this project, you can write up your DM questionnaire and shoot it over to them, and hopefully, um, they see that you're an amazing game master and they bring you over because that would be crazy.
Hmm.
If that does happen and you did hear this from the show, please just send me a text message or a message on Discord or something because I would love to know that I got you there because that'd be
Yeah.
cool, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And we have almost our full 2023 lineup out and set. So at this point, we're planning for 2024 when it comes to
wow,
talent that we bring in.
yeah,
So yeah, we encourage people to sign up and to apply, and we're excited by the different applications that we get, and yeah. So all that to say, it's an exciting part for us to be like, okay, who are the talented people that are applying and being recommended to us, and that we can consider to bring out to the castle and have them on the roster and see how they actually like interplay with our community. That's the other thing that's starting that we're excited by is the fact that the people that come to the castle, they walk away with a sense of unity and bonding as well.
mm-hmm.
Not only with the friends that maybe they came with them, but with new friends that they've made there. We've had multiple people say that they found their people, right? Because some people struggle to find people that they feel comfortable with playing intense
Right.
D&D, and like the people that show up to the castle, I mean, there's one thing that you all have in common, which is you're kind of insane for showing up. Uh,
Yeah, no, it's funny because this is the same conversation we have all the time. I am what people consider a introvert with extroverted tendencies. If I'm not in my element, I am quiet and I am to myself.
Mhm.
And people are like, "How do you deal with a con then?" I was like, "Because the con are the people I enjoy being around. Like I can talk the lingo and I can understand what's going on, and it's things I enjoy talking about."
Mhm.
Um, with something like this, I think it would just be in that niche would be even deeper, right? Because you're not just finding the con goers, you're not just finding the people who want to play D&D. You're finding people who want to be invested in D&D to this level for 4 days straight. And yeah, that's got to be a very unique group of people, which then again would connect everybody very easily. Because if you're paying the good money to go and the experience you're looking for, everybody's kind of looking for that same type of experience because you know
Mhm.
what you're getting into. Um, and everything I've heard so far, I'm I'm sold. Now, spending the amount of money and having my family be okay with it, that's a different story completely.
Yep. Yep.
But I'm going to get there sooner or later. I've got some friends through the community that are all from England, or that area. So I'd love to go over, meet some of them, do some collaboration with them, hop over to the castle for a couple days, come home. Be great. That's the
Yeah.
plan. We'll see
Well,
what
and that's actually
2024
something
brings.
that a lot of our guests do. I'll say is that a
Yeah.
lot of our guests will plan a vacation that's bigger than the D&D
Right.
experience because if you're going to go overseas to spend, just 4 days overseas, that's a pretty quick experience. But if
Yeah.
you go up and you play at the castle and then go off on your, Highland adventures or
Right.
go tour some of the intense history of the area,
Yeah.
then you get that more like lengthy vacation experience to make that flight overseas maybe make a little bit more sense. And it can be that once in a lifetime, I'm going to go, see friends I haven't seen in forever, or get to the
Yeah.
homeland, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
and then you can just tie in and weave in that intense D&D experience as part of it.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely, 100%. For people that are interested in something like this, if you just want to give me a ping, it doesn't have to be D&D in the castle, but if you're interested in this kind of intense gaming, uh, myself and a coworker of mine have talked about doing this in the US, and we'd be curious to hear your information because I think it'd be great to do as well and kind of get a version of it out here that's a little closer to home. Though that still, I think that gives the way Dungeons and Dragons is built with that medieval European culture. That's just next level to me, flying all the way over the seas and going to that land, right? Like that's the and me being both Irish and German, that whole community over there would just be fantastic to go hang out with for a couple weeks. Um, yeah, no, for I guess let's wrap up this portion then. Let's so dndandthecastle.com is where you're going to find these guys. This is where everything goes down. This is where you can book your stuff. This is where you find out who the game masters are. Everything is on their website. They also have on their contact area, you can do all their social media at that point. Um, but yeah, no, this was an amazing talk, Justin. Thank you for stepping on and just opening up to everybody because I know there's a lot of people who had those questions of like, what is it? What's going on over there? And all that. Let's step into the final section of our show, which is called Roll for Inspiration. As I tell everybody, Rolls for Inspiration brings us back to the core of what Tavern Talks was. Tavern Talks was an area where we were learning how to use practical information to help game masters and players become better. Um, First one, one of my favorite questions is there a book, TV show, movie that you draw heavy amounts of inspiration for that you might suggest to a game master or player?
yeah, yeah. Well, I was affected pretty greatly in my fantasy imagination by the Wheel of Time series
Okay.
and the Sword of Truth series, which were two major book series that I read in my youth.
What
Um,
was the second one?
the Sword of Truth,
Sword of
which has
Truth.
been recently made into a TV series as well that I have not watched yet. I'm actually pretty bad at
Okay.
getting video content in these days, so I feel like I'm pretty behind the times. But yeah, the those two book series just transported me to the world of magic and fantasy and conflict around what it means to even internally gain power. I don't know if you're familiar with the Wheel of Time series, but Randall Thor, the
Mm-hmm.
main character, he develops the ability to channel the male half of the source, and in
Mm-hmm.
that particular series, there's a male and a female half or component of the source, and so the male half is tainted in a way that if you channel it for long enough, you go crazy. And it's kind of any man who chooses to be to be a channeler of the source, it's an innate ability, but it's also a choice to develop it and to reach into it and use it to in order to reach into that and use it and to develop it causes instability in your own mind as well as a developing degradation. I don't know if you're familiar with the Call of Cthulhu um,
Mm-hmm.
version role playing game, but somewhat similar. Like the more powerful you get, the more more you lose control and your grip on
You lose
reality.
control of, yeah, grip on reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, madness levels in Call of Cthulhu are
Yeah.
insanity. Like I
Yeah.
love it. The insanity levels, things just start getting crazier and crazier.
Totally.
Uh,
So
so
that was a world that was so good at for me, like giving this creative way of having a balance and a check to the power that would be at
yeah.
hand, right? And it was a rich world of multiple different lands and areas and cultures all interacting, and I'm sure if I were to dive right back into it and look at it again, maybe I could pick it apart in a new way with adult eyes. But as
Mhm.
a child, I was looking at it with a sense of wonder as I explored these areas, and it gave me a yeah, just a framework to lean on. And then the Sword of Truth has magic again, but it's treated in a very different way.
Okay.
So those two, along with the Harry Potter series
Yeah.
and even the Lord of the Rings, with there are all those different modes of magic
Mhm.
at play. I just remember having this like versatility around what it means for there to be something of magic involved in the world. Um,
Right.
that carried with me and inspires me in multiple different ways, and it gives me a flexibility. Like one of the things that I've only recently really started to do is to dungeon master, and
Okay.
it second nature to me as soon as I started dungeon mastering to homebrew magic items.
Okay.
So I just immediately was looking at the magic items that were available as something of a menu, and
Right.
then reskinning them and reflavoring them, or expanding them into uh, different ways that they would have personality that's attached
Mhm.
to the user, and it just seemed to go hand in hand, and I attribute that to the inspiration around having those multiple different magical modes kicking around in
Yeah,
my brain.
I'm gonna have to. One thing this is one thing I do need to watch out for though, is because every time I do a tavern talk, somebody gives me a new book and I go on audio, and I'm looking to see where it's at because I try to listening to some of these because they're so good. Each one of the book series that we've been given on this show have been full of information for people to get inspiration and ideas from. Um, so this question just came out. I think I came up with it a couple weeks ago, and I really like this. I had one question that just I wasn't getting enough of what I was looking for to help people. This one seems to be a lot better for me. Um, what is a homebrew rule that you use in your game, or that you've seen used at one of the games that you've played at, that you think is just very useful that people might not know about?
Um, well, great question. I think the first one that comes to mind is probably the most recent homebrew rule that I've brought into a game, and I have a resource. I have a DM friend named James Bell, and he is you know it, an incredible dungeon master, and I feel so blessed that he was my first dungeon
There you
master,
go.
because he's versatile with his characters, he's witty, he's quick, he strategizes on how to help different people
Hmm.
through games, and I was preparing a one-shot level 20 battle royale that I was going to dungeon master for a friend's birthday, and in this, and that friend happened to be one of my previous DMs as well.
Okay.
And in this, we had all these experienced characters coming back to life to battle it out, to duke it out. And so what I introduced was, well, there were a few different homebrew rules that came into play, but the one that stuck with me was I really didn't like the fact that if you chose to drink a potion, that was the only thing you could do. That was the only action you could do in a turn. And I didn't like it because to me it felt like in a high powered situation where you have seven level 20s duking it out, to take the time to do
Right.
a potion would just completely hamstring you in that fight. So instead of it being just that option as an action, the other option was as a bonus action, you could drink the
Right.
potion, but it wouldn't take effect until the next turn. So the homebrew rule there was a way of making it so that you could chug something while you're doing your major action for the turn, and
Right.
then have it show up the next round where you
Oh.
transform. And so it was a rule that I brought in due to the experience of the characters, but it's one that I feel could be useful even with less experienced characters in level 5 and up or something like that, where they get the option of continuing their combat and don't feel robbed, but they just have to tuck that into as a bonus action. Now I know that's probably a little rules breaking, but
I mean, I know a lot of people that use bonus action for drinking potions, and it kicks in right away. I like the flavorness of it waiting. If you're just gonna chug it real fast and it'll kick in when it kicks in. Um, I also know people who use specific numbers when they drink potions compared to as a bonus action compared to uh, a full action. If you take a full action, you get a full potion, so you get the max on the potion. If you take it as a bonus action, you have to roll for it because make sure to see if you actually get all of it in your system because it's the difference between chugging a potion and drinking it all the way and making sure none of it gets wasted.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, I like the versatility of that though, where you kind of have to plan ahead and like this is getting pretty rad. I'm halfway health. Maybe I should pop a potion and it'll kick in next session. Hopefully I don't die before that happens. You know?
yeah,
But I like that one. That was really good.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the
It's
next
fun
two
to think
questions.
of. Sorry, I was just going to
No,
say it's fun
you're
to think
good.
of
What were
that.
you gonna say?
Specifically with health potions, the idea of like chugging one at the end of your turn, being knocked down. The question then becomes, does the DM allow you to basically self-resurrect or not?
Ah,
That's DM's choice
yeah.
then, whether or not the
DM's
potion
choice on
kicks
that one.
in.
I'll let the DM decide that one.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so the next two questions are kind of the similar. One is more of a shoot for the stars. The other one is more of a who do you think is great to put on the show? So the first one, of course, is the who is your TTRPG superstar or somebody in the industry you look up to?
yeah.
Now, somebody at your level where you see the cream of the crop everywhere, this might be a hard question for you.
It really is a problem. Like I was, yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is probably uh, maybe a little silly, but the first thing that came to mind was who I literally looked up to, and
Sure.
Vito Walters is just a very tall man. So so standing next to him and looking and having a conversation with him
Yeah.
is very much I am looking up to this man. So I mean, if you need somebody to shoot for as a star, of course,
Yeah.
why not see if you can
I've never had
get.
a chance to speak to him. He seems like a fantastic game master and person. I based on seeing him online though, I never would have expected him to be super tall.
Yeah.
Like
No, I
I'm
think, well,
curious to know.
he did tell me, and I feel like I'm going to get it wrong, but I believe it's about 6'8". Um, so
Holy
very tall.
crap. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else in the audience, but that's really tall.
Now, I mean, I did think of a couple other people that I would suggest might be really exciting to have on the show. And now,
Sure.
honestly, plethora of options that I
Exactly.
personally interacted with, and there's no way that I could truly pick. I mean, there are maybe some standouts that I think might be more amenable to it, or be
Yeah.
just really exciting to have on. I mean, to throw a few names out there like Elisa Teague, James Intercaso, those are both really just fantastic, amazingly intelligent DMs, as well as as a person, they're just warm to be with and
Yeah.
having
Who the
conversation.
second one?
James Intercaso, he's with MCDM
Okay.
Productions, and yeah, so he's one of our super popular DMs. As soon as he's on the roster, he's sold out. Just because he is an incredible, just an incredible DM. He doesn't have, spotlight so much in
Yeah.
the sense that he's working with Matt Colville and Matt has the
Yeah.
spotlight. But yeah, he's still well known enough, and his reputation is so
He
powerful.
holds, he's in that realm with Matt Colville, who is known to be, an amazing writer and dungeon master himself. So I
Yeah,
could not see him holding if he's in that that court with him. I could not expect him to be anything less than that anyway. So
yeah,
but that those two, at least Teague, I've seen some of her stuff, but I don't know anything about her.
Oh, so many
Um,
credits. Like just so many ridiculous long list of credits. She's been
yeah,
writing and creating in the space for so
I've
long.
heard from what everybody has told me, she is an absolutely like incredible person, and
Oh,
I'm going to, like I said, this year, 2023, the goal is to shoot for the stars as many episodes as we can
yeah.
because we've done the first year was kind of getting us our feet wet and understanding how the system's going to work and how we're going to run the show. This year we started ramping up, getting newer people, more popularity. Next year, we're going to try to shoot for the stars. So
Yeah.
anybody that's offered, we're going to reach out to them and we're going to at least ask and see if they're interested.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
And so let me give you the names of two people that I think would be probably, I'd say, really wise choices to reach out to. And they came to the castle um, as a couple, and they super friendly, super knowledgeable. I'd say they're more on the up and coming side, where they're
nice.
still establishing their base of popularity.
Yeah.
And so that's Beth the Bard and
Hmm.
Jaiden King, both on the more up and coming side. But the way that Paul Foxcroft, who was at the event, described Jaiden was this guy having a conversation with him for less than an hour. He
Yeah.
developed three subclasses and into useful levels. So you cut this guy, he bleeds D&D is the way that Paul
Yeah.
Fox coined it. And yeah, and then Beth the Bard. I mean, um, she's developed a small and loyal community.
Yep.
I shouldn't even say small anymore because it's in the thousands.
Yeah. She's
That
grown.
just that love to see her perform and work. And so if you would, yeah, if you want to reach out to them, they'd be my kind of first suggestion where I think they
Sure.
would respond with like, oh, hey, if Justin said where people to go to, they'd probably like to jump in as a duo is and they'd
Well,
be they're
that
so
would be
personality
awesome.
heavy and rich as well, so they just light up your show, I think.
Awesome. I think it'd be great cast to have then and great people. Um, Last two questions. Last the question before we go to the end, because the end is really everybody had to answer this question. Um, this next question is, do you have a practical tip for somebody stepping into the community, the D&D community as a player or a game master?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first is take the risk. Go for it, and certainly don't be shy about not knowing all the rules. um I'd say that from my experience, every game master, dungeon master, player that I've been at the table with is generous, where they really want everybody to have the type of amazing experiences they've had at the D&D table. And so there's a generosity around supporting through combat, supporting through character development, supporting through, and I mean, maybe I'm just kind of blessed with having found that community of friendship and openness in the games that I've played, but it's been pretty universal. So take the risk. If somebody invites you to a game, it's actually because they want you there, and you don't need to be shy about not knowing. And then again, with the more at the game master level, take the risk. You might feel like you might feel like you're not going to be great at storytelling or not going to be perfect at running combat, or maybe you don't feel like you have a strong handle on all the rules yet. But again, like the what I've seen is if people that you're leading through, if you've got a community of friends that you're playing with already, and you're like, hey, I'd love to run a one shot. Like I'd love to try a hand at DMing, especially if your own DM chooses to play at your table,
Right.
you're going to be supported. And you're going to be supported well, and in my experience, again, very lovingly supported. Um, so if you take that risk and go for it, I mean, I really hope your experience has been like mine, where you feel supported, you feel welcome, and that it's a learning, growing experience that you feel like you can lean into, and a bonding experience that you get to walk away from with a beautiful community.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Take the risk. Uh, I did it years and years ago, redid it again once I became an adult. This is um, my this is the place where I feel the most comfortable. But at the same time, if it wasn't for those game masters, if it wasn't for those people that were willing to support me during it, it might have been a different experience completely. And you wouldn't be listening to me today, so it'd be weird.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. The experiences I had through my military career in Dungeons and Dragons kind of have led me to where I'm at now in Dungeons and Dragons. So I thought it was
yeah,
pretty awesome.
yeah.
Uh,
I think yeah, there's one more thing that I want to add for
sure.
both players and GMs and DMs, which is the rules. They're more like guidelines, really. I
That's
just
how I
feel like
like
that's important to state
guidelines.
because a lot of people get into kind of like get into niggling bits, and conversation can actually get quite heated about interpretation of rules. And
Yes.
I want to empower the DMs with the statement like, in the end, it is up to you.
Right.
But also, like you don't need to be strict to the rules. The rules are
Right.
there to support the storytelling, to support the enjoyment of everybody around the table going
Right.
through an adventure. And that adventure can include hard challenges and like grim consequences. But nonetheless, remember that it's to support that experience. And then
Yes.
as a player, yeah, definitely rules are more like guidelines. This is where they combine, take the risk. If you think there's something epic that could happen, but in your interpretation, your DM might, shut it down, or it just doesn't seem like it's possible. Sometimes it's worth just taking the risk and
Yeah.
seeing if the DM loves it enough. Sometimes they'll be like, let's find a way to make it happen and see if it, watch it
Yeah.
flourish into this crazy story. And like,
Environmental things
yeah,
is like the first thing that comes to my mind. Party was in a cave last night. Described there were stalactites hanging from the cave. A hydra came out of the water, and the guy was like, "Can I shatter the ceiling and have the rock chop on the hydra?" And I was like, let's try it. Let's figure out. Let's see how this works because it was
yeah,
just an epic moment that had happened. Um, and then mechanically, I just did, for each rock that fell, you took the 3d6 because of the fall damage for 20 feet high. And I was like, okay, cool. This is what we'll do.
yep,
Um,
yep,
but it was a lot of fun.
totally.
Uh, well, we have it. We have a question from a friend of mine for you. It says, "Do you provide player immersion props and items, or do you allow the GMs to bring their own?" Guessing both.
Yeah. So like in short, we invite the DMs to bring their own game, like bring their game that they think
Right.
would be awesome. And so some of the DMs do. Sorry, I flip back and forth GM and DM, just so you know.
Yeah, that's fine.
We are a licensed D&D company, so we get
Yes.
the privilege of using a DM when referring to our DMs, which is great. But I know that GM is also a very common term too. So
Yep.
all that to say, yeah, the DMs will bring what they want to support the game. Some DMs bring props, some bring miniatures, some rely on our resource library that we provide as well. And when it comes to like we have some of our events, we're not trying to be LARPy really, but we want to give the opportunity that if people want to dress up and show off their character costumes, that they're welcome
Right.
to. And we have one couple rather, that come repeatedly, and we're so blessed by them. They bring costumes, one for every day, so they show up
Wow.
every day. And so as much as
I think
we,
Mark Meir did the same thing for the October Festival,
oh
though.
yeah,
Because I saw pictures with him every day, and he was something completely different.
yeah, and Mark is, I mean, just fantastic to see what he's going to be wearing. He brings his prosthetic masks
I was gonna say
and
he brings so much craziness, and it's all, prosthetics and very dark grim, and no, I just fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh,
So I will say
so
in some we provide like some in the way of maybe more like photo shoot props, but we don't have like an extensive resource of costumes or props. But when it comes to providing things for games, we do have that resource library that the DMs can draw from to bring to their gaming table. They can draw for their guests as well. We also recently got a huge sponsorship from WizKids, which we're
oh,
so
yeah.
grateful for, which
Warlock
brings
tiles all over the place.
well, it's really cool. So we got a bunch of skeletons, we got a bunch of like war bands, sets, but we
Yeah.
also got like the gargantuan Balagos, which is the
Oh yeah.
dragon, the ancient dragon.
Yeah.
And we got a bunch of adult dragons, like silver, green, etc. And then we got gargantuan Tiamat. We got, I think, still yet to be released, although it might have come out, the Tarask,
Yeah.
and a bunch of play mats. And so we have these items that are just going to amplify the space and the gaming tables if the DMs choose to lean into that and use them. Yeah, and then so beyond that though, we invite people to bring to D&D in a castle everything that they would like to like amplify
To
the experience.
utilize, right?
And we're as a company, we're still growing, so we're looking at things like offering either costume packages or like what we can bring into that space. We're just not quite there yet, right? Where we feel like we have the wardrobe that you can just walk into
Right.
and
The
grab.
wardrobe. Yeah. You just grab and go.
Yeah.
Um, this is a little bit more. Now I understand who it's coming from. So one of our audience members who always is in he's always in the chat room. He's another game master, but he loves immersion effects, and he asked, "Do you allow fire effects?" Now
um,
he is
Great
the
question.
when he was on our show a couple months ago. When he does his immersion, it's very like Rick and Morty scientific. So he'll make potion bottles change color with adding a little something, or having something spark up because you use a specific chemical. Like, he's very intricate on these things. It's
Yeah,
fantastic
yeah.
to see the uniqueness of it. But they're little kid experiment tools that he uses for immersion techniques.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so the short answer is if
Don't
we
burn
can
the
get
castle
it
down.
by the castle, Lumley Castle, with their fire regulations and codes,
Yeah.
then we would certainly entertain it and hopefully say yes. And when it comes to things like fire specifically, we have had candles like basically lining the rooms.
Oh, I
So
bet.
like fire in and of itself is not a faux pas within the castle,
Right.
or rather banned in the castle. But if you're talking about like a large pyrotechnic display, I think that's going to be hard to get by their fire code. But if it's scientific sparks, etc., and it's
Yeah.
demonstrable that it's safe and it's not catching and it's whatnot, then it's just a discussion. And we love to certainly entertain immersion effects. We've had recently we just got kind of like a basic shipment of LED coloring for the rooms. So if you
Okay.
we have some color LED panels that you can change the
Yeah.
color of the room. We provide Bluetooth speakers for our DMs so that if they just want to
Use
bring their device and
Sirenscapes or whatever
soundscape
their music
exactly.
is.
And then again, providing props, etc. But yeah, if you as a DM have a crazy idea and want to make it part of your experience, like we had a couple of DMs choose to take their guests outside the castle to do some adventuring in the forest behind the castle. And so they played outside of the castle for a while, and it was a bit more storytelling and theater of the mind, and just putting them into the setting that they were
The
in
experience,
their
right?
campaign. It wasn't LARPing per se because they weren't necessarily out there, in costume, etc. But they
Right.
used the environment to amplify the game. So
Yeah.
we're open to ideas that stretch the idea of sitting around the table playing. We've had multiple DMs use the castle space as a combat space where you'll go into the castle and you'll use the tiles on the floor to mark your movement, and you'll be directed through a combat where you have different people playing. I got to play a wizard that in the end had my head split open like a watermelon. But it just all in service of the game that the guests were playing. So it was pretty
Right.
cool. Oh yeah,
That's
our GM Tim,
fantastic.
who actually still has a couple of tickets left for November, he's renowned for that. The GM Tim likes to use real spaces for combats and
Oh,
describe and kind of like direct it as a stage director as it's happening.
oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah,
All right. Well, it has been a wonderful time, but I am pretty sure that the rest of the patrons in the tavern have went off for the evening, as it is last call. So before we let you go, and before we close the tavern down for the night, what is the next step for Dungeons and Dragons in a Castle? What
Next
should we
step.
be looking forward to in 2023 and 2024?
Yeah. So our next steps, 2023, 2024, what we are looking at developing into is two kind of foundational things. Is what can we bring in to give the DMs all the resources they could possibly want, so that they can run the most amazing campaign ever. And so we're in discussion with the DMs at Wizards about how we can transform the castle space. So it's historic as it is, but in its basic form, it's still a 14th century castle that's been through remodeling, etc.
Right.
And the art that's in it is more Victorian era art. And the so the idea would be, how can we change the internal art, reface it and make it come alive with elements of Dungeons and Dragon art all over the place? How can we turn that fireplace into like maybe tentacles reaching out into the space?
Yeah.
Can we take the busts and skin them with a mask that makes them look like they're one of the iconic characters, Drizzt or whatnot? Can we what can we do to make that castle come more alive? But then what can we do to make the guest experience be one where every touch point that they have while they're in the castle some way reflects or relates to their campaign experience? So that's what we're moving towards, is how can we make it so that when you show up at this castle, it's already alive with Dungeons and Dragons, and you don't even have to wait until you're sitting at your table to feel like you've entered into the realm of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's awesome. I have goosebumps, like literally, they're coming down my neck right now. I'm excited, looking forward to seeing where D&D in a Castle goes these next couple years. And hopefully we'll see you again this year at one of the cons coming up. And for all of our audience and our friends, thank you for sticking around the tavern. This is last call. This will be the last Tavern Talks of the year. And what a wonderful way to end the year out with Dungeons and Dragons in a Castle, giving us that immersion feel that we all love and enjoy. So for everybody that's going to watch this from now until the end of the year, I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Sorry we were not able to play last week for our Lord of the Rings campaign. Sadly, about half of our players are either sick or having some family issues that they have to deal with. And we are excited to come back for 2023, bigger, better, more quality, and ready to play. So thank you all once again for a great year. This is an amazing way to end it out. We'll see you guys all next year. Keep an eye out on the social medias and have a wonderful holiday.
Awesome.